It's time for Wretched Radio with Todd Friel.
What do these three things have in common? This is Wretched Radio. There are three things that are in the forefront of the news these days, and I would like to suggest to you that they're actually related. Those three things are Ruth Bader Ginsburg, critical theory, and Christianity. Okay. That's right. Three things. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, critical theory, and Christianity. I think that there is something that is important for us to discover that is a thread running through these three big things. What is it? That is the question. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as you know, recently died, and wow, were her praises sung. Everybody, including evangelical Christianities, were quick to applaud a woman who dedicated her life to basically fighting against God. Ultimately, from a Christian perspective, that is what her existence was about. Anything that was moral according to the Bible, anything that ultimately was a dictate from God, she warred against it. From the life issue, gender issues, marriage issues, family issues, she warred against those things. And yet, so many Christians took the time to sing her accolades. Did you find that as mysterious as I did?
Found that odd.
I couldn't understand it. I realize that we can eulogize some people who are not believers and say they were a good family member. They were a good spouse. We can say kindly things, but when somebody's life is a dedicated war against everything that is helpful and good, it's pretty tough to spend some ink saying wonderful things about that person, and yet that is what happened. And finally, somebody has said so. The American thinker writing the canonization of Saint Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the author is Faye Rochelle. What is perhaps more troubling than the accordance of sainthood on the former justice by the left are the praises of Christians and others who have almost fought one another in conferring honors on a person who has unalterably and ferociously opposed to everything Christianity once stood for without apology. You read those articles, didn't you? And she's not the first one, by the way. There have been many people who have been high profile, who have done, I'm sure, some good things, but when their life was dedicated to the taking of human life in the womb, how is it that so many Christians are saying, well, sure, there's that, but we can still say nice things? Why is that a trend? Back to the American thinker, the sacredness of every human life, she was against it. The sanctity of marriage, check. The biological distinctions of the sexes, and the integrity of the church. And yet we heard people saying, what a wonderful person and what a wonderful life was led by this powerhouse, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. To the American thinker, Ginsburg called for the sex integration of Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts because they perpetuate stereotyped sex roles. College fraternities and sororities were to be replaced with college social societies. Ginsburg called for the reducing of the age of consent for sexual acts to people who are less than 12 years old. That's according to Phyllis Schlafly. She wrote that laws against bigamous, persons cohabitating with more than one woman, and women cohabitating with a bigamist are unconstitutional. Further, prostitution was a consensual act and the Mann Act was offensive, as such acts were to be considered within the zone of privacy. In other words, if your door is closed, you can do whatever you want to. It's your body. Keep your laws off of it. Ginsburg listed hundreds of sexist words that must be eliminated from all statutes. The offensive words were man, woman, man-made, mankind, husband, wife, mother, father, sister, brother, son, daughter, service, man, longshore, man, postmaster, watchman, seamanship, to man one's vessel. She even wanted pronouns, she, him, her, etc. to be changed. Not only did Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg pass former President Bill Clinton's litmus test of being pro-abortion, she even supported partial birth abortion. She was also on record as opposing what was then settled law that the Constitution does not compel taxpayers to pay for abortions. Why is it that evangelicals were quick to say, what a life she led? What a force of nature she was. There's no denying that. But it was a destructive force. The hallmark of secular progressive religion has become the defining virtue of the conservative Christian community. The drive to appear nice and inoffensive, to understand the other viewpoint, no matter how offensive or filthy, frankly, has vitiated the Judeo-Christian virtues of justice and righteousness, of steadfast opposition to evil. If that assessment by the American thinker is correct, I think that has a lot to do with why so many Christians, our third category, are so soft, we'll say, on the issue of critical race theory. Is it possible that there is a zeitgeist that is infiltrating Christianity that leads us to sing praises of a woman who dedicated her days to doing bad things? And the attitude of desiring to be kindly, intellectual, to appear to be reasonable, it has led us to tip very far into a ditch and say, she was an amazing woman. And I wonder if that is not the exact same sentiment, the attitude that is causing so many to be softer on critical theory. Now, I'm not suggesting that they actually embrace critical theory, but they're softer on it. They don't denounce it. They don't totally reject it. They can say things like, well, it can be, for instance, a helpful analytical tool. You know what? There are things that we can learn from intersectionality. Why not use some of these tools to better understand the way the world operates? Why don't we hear stories from people so that we can understand our Bibles better? That attitude, I think, stems from the same attitude that is the cause for the praises being sung by evangelicals of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We want to be seen as being thoughtful, as being balanced, as being kind even, not a terrible thing. And by the way, being thoughtful and balanced isn't necessarily bad. It just depends on the situation. And while I recognize there can be some gray areas in a conversation like that, at the same time, is it possible that we Christians have perhaps been drinking and breathing in the air of our society that says you've got to be tolerant, you've got to be nice, you've got to be thoughtful, you can't hurt anybody's feelings? Am I suggesting we become jerks? No, we don't need to practice that. We're plenty good at that. But maybe, just maybe, the reason that we're finding ourselves scratching our heads that so many of our good brothers and sisters are taking a different position on issues like the life and death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, critical theory, the death of other politicians who have spent a lot of effort to make sure that more babies are aborted, it is because we are consuming this concept that says we've got to at least say some nice things before we can say any bad things. We've got to look for the good. We have to be more nuanced. We need to create new categories for thinking through these issues. I've heard that recently. We need new categories. You know, see, in the past, evangelicals, they were just so black and white when it came to political issues. The whole abortion thing, if somebody wasn't pro-life, then you couldn't vote for them. You know, I'm not suggesting that you vote for somebody who's a pro-abortion candidate. I'm just saying there needs to be another category here that allows for some space for us to work through these issues. Does that sound familiar? We need to be intellectuals who are willing to perhaps take a look at issues in a more nuanced fashion and see and glean if there's anything good. We need to have an intellectual enterprise that is broader than just black and white and the historical categories that evangelicals have used. Question: are any of those sentiments valid? And if they are, and I think to a degree they can be, how do we apply them without becoming total sellout squish bombs who compromise on life and everything that's important to family and everything that is theologically important? Next on Wretched Radio.
Hello, Maria. This is Todd Friel from your auto insurance company, noticing you're not taking advantage of any of our life insurance policies. Really? Really, you're not afraid to die? That's funny. Listen to this clip from Paul Washer.
I'm talking about you.
So what do you think of that, Maria?